Soner, McGaw, and EJ. Math teacher asked his class once, "What's half of 8? One student boldly replied, 0 or 3. The teacher scratched his head and said, "How does that make sense? Even if you double both, you still don't get 8. So the student replied, "Well, if you cut it this way, you get 2 3s. If you cut it this way, you get 2 0s. The teacher shook his head, because clearly this kid was mathematically wrong. But if you look at it from the standpoint of creativity, this kid was dead on. He was able to see the same concept, but in a different light. Now, we've all seen this optical illusion with the duck and the rabbit. But this is an insight that each and every one of us has when we grow up, when we're divided, like love. But by the time we are grown up, we somehow lose it. And it's what separates the Steve Jobs from the rest of us. Now, Brahma gives us a very simple ajna over here at RDUKM. And for those of us that immerse ourselves by taking this ajna, we realize that skill, that insight that we had from very young, we still maintain it. In fact, we develop it. And it's one of those things that until we take that step, we never realize. So that step came in 2006 when Puja Priya Seswani sat me down and said, "Rushil, it's time you stop wiping after RDUKM after puja." So that momentous day came, January 1st, 07. I took a deep breath. I walked out the front door. I looked up. All right, it wasn't that dramatic, because the real fun happened a few weeks later, once classes started on campus. People would come up to me with all sorts of awkward questions. "Is that a tattoo? Have you gone seen a doctor yet? It seems like you're bleeding." Or better yet, "Dude, you're about to get sniped. Do you know where to go?" Now, I don't know if that was worse, or when my friends would talk to me, they wouldn't talk to me anymore. They just talked to my forehead. And it made me feel like I had a giant pimple that was about to explode and spew everybody with pus in a 5-foot radius. And I thought that was uncomfortable, but the most unsettling thought of it all was whenever public area I walked into, be it a library, a gym, or a bus, I felt like somebody somewhere in some corner was pointing, mocking, and insulting everything I stood for. And the more I thought about it, the more nervous I got even walking out of the dorm. My heart rate would race, I would get really nervous. But then the more I thought about it, I realized it's not the problem with everyone else, it's my own insecurity. And there's something that Brahma Swami says that really helped me get through this sort of stage of my life. In every Ashirvad, Brahma Swami says over and over, Atma Vichar, we are Atma. We should realize ourselves to be Atma. And before I just sort of throw it to the side because I didn't know what it really meant, but here was a perfect opportunity for me to put it into perspective. Because here I was so concerned about my appearance that I had no potential or no ability to even converse with one another. But once I realized, and once I thought I was Atma, I began putting together my explanation. So whenever somebody asked, I could say it with pride. And when that happened, I realized that my story took this much effort to put together. The story that other people had, it takes that much effort to put together as well. It opened the world for me to the stories of others, just like we saw in that Ignite talk earlier. And so whenever I looked at a face in the crowd, it wasn't just another face in the crowd. It was an opportunity to grow, to learn, to enrich my own experience. So once I crossed the paths with, the following year, there was a man from El Salvador who was telling me about how his dream was to bring his kids to the United States. And the more I spoke with him, I realized that's not too different from what my parents were thinking 25, 30 years ago when they came to America. Or the woman that was sitting next to me when I flew back from London, from Europe, from Hungary, who was explaining how hard it was for her to get a visa just to come to the United States. And I thought here it was just Indians and people in Mandir who had visa issues. But the biggest one was being able to speak with people who I thought were always hostile or averse to us. Like the born-again Christian who was lecturing me about how much he pitied the fact that I would never experience the glory of Jesus Christ. Now, truth be told, even in all these situations, I actually appreciated, I actually looked forward to listening to what this person had to say. Why? Because I was interested and curious about what narrative, what story they were bringing to the table. And when I thought about this entire idea of RDUKM that was renewed nearly 200 years ago by Sriji Maharaj, when Bishop Heber came with the intention of converting Sriji Maharaj into a Christian, that limited perception, decision, choice of his, it washed away when he saw Sriji Maharaj's followers, when he saw that there were Muslims, that there were Brahmins, that there were Ghatis, that there were Rajputs, people of all different groups, people of all different faiths, all wearing the same symbol, all realizing that they shared a common human existence. So when we look today, people always complain about how there's divisive change and how the world is shifting and how nobody gets along with anyone. But really, this is a lesson that we all need to learn from, to appreciate each other's story by first appreciating our own. Because in this day and age, as our Sunsta grows, we don't know what story is going to be sitting in the audience right next to us. And in order for us to appreciate their narrative, in order for us to appreciate their background, we have to first appreciate ours. In order to change the world, we have to change our world. And we can start by doing our deal of Jumbo.